The United States is about to experience one of the most dramatic weather pattern flips we've seen in years as we transition from the historic winter of 2026 into what could be an extremely volatile and dangerous spring severe weather season. Right now, we're seeing the jet stream pattern completely reorganizing itself, setting up conditions that will bring a completely different type of weather threat starting in March. The western ridge and eastern trough pattern that has dominated our weather for months is about to flip, evolving toward a western trough and eastern ridge configuration that will unleash severe weather across the central United States like we haven't seen since last year's devastating outbreak. What makes this transition so concerning is that while tornado numbers may be lower than the exceptional 2025 season, the atmosphere is priming itself for a different but equally dangerous type of severe weather. Widespread damaging wind events, catastrophic flash flooding, and training thunderstorms that could impact much larger areas simultaneously. So in today's forecast, I'm going to break down exactly what this massive pattern flip means for the severe weather season ahead, how the rapid exit from La Niña conditions is reshaping our storm patterns, and why meteorologists are warning that March through May could bring some of the most destructive weather events we've seen in years. Let me start by explaining what's happening with this dramatic pattern change that's about to completely alter our weather landscape. The Weather Prediction Center and Storm Prediction Center are both highlighting a large-scale change to the overall upper air pattern that's happening right now. This western ridge that has been keeping much of the country locked in winter conditions is about to break down, while an eastern ridge builds up, creating a completely different storm track pattern. This pattern flip is going to allow southwest mid-level flow into the central United States, which will support a gradual warming and moistening of the plains' low-level environment. What this means is that we're going to start seeing moisture return from the Gulf of Mexico in earnest, and when you combine that with the temperature contrasts and upper-level energy, you get the perfect setup for severe thunderstorm development. The ensemble guidance is showing strong consensus that this moisture return will begin by this weekend, with southerly winds taking hold across the central United States. But here's what makes this situation particularly concerning. AccuWeather's 2026 severe weather forecast is predicting between 1,050 and 1,250 tornadoes across the United States this year, which is right around the historical average of 1,225. However, the type of severe weather we're going to see is going to be fundamentally different from what we experienced in 2025. Last year was characterized by exceptional tornado activity, with nearly two-thirds of the year's tornadoes occurring from March through May. This year, the atmosphere is setting up to favor a different type of storm structure altogether. Instead of the discrete, rotating supercells that produce most tornadoes, the 2026 pattern is more likely to support what meteorologists call Mesoscale Convective Systems, or MCS events, and squall lines. These organized lines of thunderstorms are notorious for producing widespread wind damage and what we call training echoes, where storms move over the same area repeatedly, leading to extreme rainfall totals and catastrophic flash flooding. This shift is being driven by changes in the upper-level jet stream pattern as we rapidly exit La Niña conditions. The El Niño Southern Oscillation pattern is trending from a neutral state toward El Niño by the summer months, and this transition is coinciding with the rapid exit from La Niña, which has significant implications for the upper-level jet stream. A weaker jet stream during the spring typically reduces the wind shear necessary for the formation of discrete, rotating supercells, but it increases the likelihood of these linear storm systems that can be even more destructive over larger areas. In March, the highest threat for severe weather is going to extend from the Central Plains eastward into Alabama and Georgia. This is historically when Texas, Alabama, and Mississippi experience their highest tornado counts. And the pattern we're seeing this year is very similar to what we saw during last year's devastating March outbreak that spawned more than 90 tornadoes across 13 states and resulted in dozens of fatalities. The main storm track is expected to remain west of the Appalachians, which will limit widespread rainfall along the East Coast, but will set up episodes of intense weather across the South and Central Plains. What's particularly concerning about this setup is the flooding potential. One of the most sobering aspects of the 2026 severe weather outlook is the emphasis on flash flooding. While total annual rainfall across the contiguous United States has declined by 2.7% since 1995, the intensity of individual rain events has been skyrocketing. According to AccuWeather's climate study, the frequency of extreme rainfall events, defined as more than 4 inches of rain falling within a 24-hour period, has surged by 70%. This trend is expected to manifest very clearly in 2026. The slower pace of the jet stream that we're expecting this spring could lead to a higher frequency of upper-level low-pressure areas, producing heavier rainfall amounts and resulting in storms that are more disruptive and impactful. These slower-moving storm systems can produce what meteorologists call training, where multiple rounds of thunderstorms move over the same area, leading to rainfall totals that can reach catastrophic levels in just a few hours. Current river levels are running low across much of the midsection of the nation this winter from a lack of snow and rain, but just a few storms in the back end of winter into early spring can turn this around quickly. The combination of melting snow and heavier spring rainfall raises the risk for river and flash flooding across the Mississippi and Ohio valleys. We've seen similar setups in past years, like 2013, 2014, and 2023, when spring flooding became a major issue across these regions. The tornado threat is still going to be significant, even though the overall numbers may be lower than last year. Tornado activity will gradually ramp up as the spring progresses. In March, tornadoes are forecast to focus on an area from northern Georgia to Oklahoma and northward through most of Illinois. By April, tornadoes will become more frequent, with most tornado-producing storms focusing on the Mississippi River Valley. As the calendar turns to May, the focus will shift toward the traditional tornado alley, with areas from central Texas to eastern Nebraska facing the highest tornado risk. What's important to understand is that even though we're predicting fewer tornadoes overall, tornado reports may trend lower than last year, but it only takes one storm striking a densely populated or vulnerable community to make this a devastating season. A single outbreak or one tornado striking a populated area can define a spring regardless of how the final count compares to average. The key difference this year is that we're more likely to see widespread wind damage events that affect much larger areas simultaneously. The most consistent corridor for severe weather episodes this spring is expected to set up in the typical areas from the eastern plains into the mid-Mississippi Valley and western Ohio Valley, especially during March and April. Cooler air will likely limit severe weather farther north in the plains and Midwest until late April and May, partly due to the icy conditions on the Great Lakes. On February 9th, ice coverage on the Great Lakes reached 58%, the highest level since 2019, which will help keep temperatures cooler across the northern areas early in the season. But as we get into late April and May, that protective shield will retreat, and we're expecting an uptick in traditional tornado alley activity centered on the western plains. The atmosphere is expected to become much more volatile in those regions as we head into the peak of severe weather season. AccuWeather experts predict that the high-risk window for significant tornadoes is likely to shift around March's core across the Central Plains into the southeast. In Oklahoma specifically, which is typically one of the most tornado-prone states, officials with the National Weather Service in Norman are saying there's no signal right now of a tornado system building in the immediate future. However, local forecasters believe the tornado-producing systems could start arriving in Oklahoma in late March. The state saw 15 tornadoes in March 2025, which opened the door for 85 tornadoes over the following 3 months. The drought conditions that have been affecting much of the central United States are also raising fire weather concerns. The lack of rainfall that many states are experiencing is raising fire risks, and with the expected pattern of stronger winds and dry conditions early in the season, we could see significant wildfire threats across parts of the Southwest, Southern High Plains, and interior Mid-Atlantic regions. Beyond the severe weather threats, the spring transition is going to be dramatically different across different parts of the country. The Northeast, Great Lakes, and Pacific Northwest are expected to have a slower transition to spring weather compared to historical averages. Much of the Southwest, from Southern California to Texas, is expected to see an early arrival of spring-like weather. This creates a very sharp temperature contrast that will fuel the development of these strong storm systems. The Northeast and Midwest will experience what meteorologists are calling a seasonal tug-of-war throughout the upcoming season, with cold air winning the battle more often than spring-like warmth, especially early in the season. This doesn't eliminate the possibility of late-season snow events or brief blasts of colder air, even as the overall trend moves toward above-average temperatures. The Climate Prediction Center's 3 to 4 week outlook continues to favor above-average temperatures across much of the central and eastern United States, but that doesn't mean uniform warmth everywhere. The West's developing trough pattern is expected to channel Gulf moisture into the central United States, increasing precipitation chances there and raising the potential for severe thunderstorms in that region. Looking at the immediate future, the Storm Prediction Center is already highlighting isolated to scattered thunderstorms across portions of the Gulf states into the southeast. A few storms may produce hail across portions of northern Mississippi into northern Alabama, which is exactly the type of early-season severe weather we'd expect to see as this pattern begins to establish itself. As we move through the next few weeks, water vapor imagery shows a well-defined shortwave trough digging southeast across the Central Plains. This is the type of upper-level energy that will interact with the returning Gulf moisture to produce these severe weather events. The low-level jet will strengthen across Georgia into North Carolina, which will provide the moisture transport necessary for storm development. What makes this particularly challenging for forecasters and emergency managers is that we're dealing with multiple types of hazards simultaneously. While the Northeast may still be experiencing periods of snow or mixed precipitation, the climate signal is warning residents in southern states to stay alert for severe weather. The transition period can be especially volatile because you have these sharp air mass contrasts that can lead to explosive storm development. For people living in the risk areas, this means you need to start preparing now for a potentially very active and dangerous severe weather season. Make sure you have multiple ways to receive weather warnings, including weather radios and smartphone alerts. Have a severe weather safety plan for your home, work, and school. Know where your safe areas are for tornado threats, but also prepare for the possibility of widespread power outages from damaging winds and extended flooding events. The flooding threat in particular is going to require a different type of preparation than what many people might be used to. These training thunderstorm events can produce catastrophic amounts of rainfall in very short periods of time, leading to flash flooding that can be life-threatening. Never attempt to drive through flooded roads, and be prepared for the possibility that flooding could cut off access to your area for extended periods. This pattern flip represents one of the most significant changes in our weather pattern that we've seen in years, and it's going to bring challenges that are different from what we experienced during last year's tornado-heavy season. While there may be fewer tornadoes overall, the threat from widespread wind damage and catastrophic flooding could actually be more dangerous for larger populations. As always, thank you all so much for watching today's forecast. If you are new to the channel, make sure to subscribe down below. We'll be closely monitoring this developing severe weather pattern, and we'll provide detailed updates as we head into what could be one of the most impactful springs we've seen in years. So make sure to click the bell icon so you're notified with the latest updates. Stay weather aware out there, and we'll see you in the next one.